Welcome aboard. As the demand for specialist IT skills skyrockets, organisations are grappling with the talent shortage by introducing their own apprenticeship schemes. Today, we explore apprenticeships, lessons learnt from elsewhere, and the government funding that might be available to your organisation. All of that today on the Digital Lounge. Everybody, and welcome to today's Digital Lounge. Today on the show, we have Kat Halstead. Kat's from Crimson. She's the instigator behind Crimson's own award-winning apprenticeship scheme. And also joining us today is Martin Stilgo from Digital Native, a tech apprenticeship provider and partner to Crimson. Welcome both. Thank you for joining us. Kat, if I may go first to you. Could you just explain a little bit of the background to Crimson's own apprenticeship scheme? We called it the Crimson Academy for a start, didn't we?
Sure, that's right, Mark. Well, of course, we're really passionate about our academy, about growing our own talent. But if we sort of rewind first back to 2018, 2019, we had a really strong business growth plan. But one of the benefits of having the recruitment arm of our business, we recognized that there was a UK digital skills gap coming in the marketplace. We were already seeing that in terms of, the challenges around recruiting experienced dynamics consultants. So we knew there was a challenge already. And whilst we could hire, a certain amount, we recognized that we needed to have not just that short term plan, which was sort of, you could fill hires with contract or perm in certain instances, but what was our medium and longer term plan? So we'd already started working with, a strong partner in Digital Native, who are a bespoke technical apprenticeship provider. We had 5 apprentices already, but we recognized that we really needed to invest to grow that program and to invest to get the sort of returns from that talent as well. So we really wanted to explore that further, and that was really the start of our journey from an academy perspective. Of course, we were also looking at for the medium to longer term in developing our own staff within the organization, and that meant having career pathways in place as well.
Brilliant. And it sounds like it's not as straightforward as maybe some people think with establishing an apprenticeship scheme of any sort. It's not a case of just hiring some youngsters in and having them shadow. It sounds like that there needs to be a much more structured plan. So where did Crimson start with that?
Well, that's a really good point, actually, Mark. And that was one of our lessons learned, because, as I said, we already had 5 apprentices within the business, but we recognized that we just weren't giving them enough support. It's not good enough just to, work with an apprenticeship provider. As amazing as Digital Native are as a provider, we recognized that we needed to, input and invest ourselves. And that's where the sort of basis for the academy has started. So I joined the business back in 2019. And the first thing we wanted to do is, as all good change programs, start with a vision. So we talked to the stakeholders about what was it that we were looking for, and I think with Martin's help we shaped that in terms of, traditionally you go for, strong tech experts, and we really unpicked that to try and identify what is it that we need to be successful. What are those skills that we're looking for in apprentices? We talked about what is the apprenticeship program look like, feel like, and sound like. And we pulled together a vision statement, which was that we wanted to create successful, happy, rounded tech professionals. So that was our vision, and then we worked to kind of unpick that to say, well, what does it mean when we say professional? Well, that's the tech bit. That's providing a business analyst tech training program, or a software tester or software developer, whatever the tech bit is that you need, that skill set. And that's where Digital Native strongly came in. But we wanted more than that. We wanted to look at the emotional intelligence, the high order human skills, the business skills, the wrap around of that program. So that's a bit about what we started to look at. But the look like, feel like, and sound like was really, really important to us, and the clarity of what we wanted as an end result. So as I said, historically we'd look at tech experts. what we realized is the way we'd approached the recruitment was we were just looking at, the qualifications, looking at the 5 apprentices we had. They were all white, they were all male, and they were all within the ages of sort of 18 to 22, which is not unusual for the tech space. Didn't help us with our diversity, didn't help us necessarily with it being innovative and having that, additional perspectives. So we looked at our presence on the website. What did it look like? What sort of images were we using? Did we give an insight to females that might want to join the tech space? Were we going wide enough in terms of our recruitment plans? So how did we leverage the additional talent we were looking for? Well, we took out the requirement for a tech degree or tech qualifications. What we asked for is people that were passionate or even just interested in using tech to solve business problems, and that was a really good starting place for us.
Mm. And I think that there is often a misunderstanding in schools and maybe even universities, I don't know, around what technology looks like in business. And therefore there's a
Absolutely right.
misunderstanding. Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely right.
Okay. Martin, if I may come to you, I mentioned at the top of the show that there is funding available potentially to help with this, and I would imagine this shouldn't be the primary motivation for any organisation, but obviously any support. This clearly sounds like a big investment for any organisation. But perhaps you could. I know we've got a slide. I'm just going to add for those that are able to join the show on video today. But if you could just sort of explain to our audience a little bit about the type of funding that might be available, please.
Certainly, and as you say, Mark, it shouldn't be the primary motivation, but as you can probably expect, most organisations start with a vision, like Kat outlined, and then the FD at some point will go, how much is this going to cost us? So I think we've got some information on the screen now. I'm not going to talk too much about the apprenticeship levy because that's been in place for a number of years now, and most companies that are paying that are probably well aware of that. The only point that I'd like to make there is a lot of organisations aren't aware that once they've exceeded their levy pot, i.e. they've spent all of it, that the government will still pick up 95% of the training fees once they've spent that particular pot. So that's an important one for large employers to pick up on. Thinking of organisations with a PAYE bill of less than 3 million that aren't currently paying the apprenticeship levy, again, the key headline figure is the government is going to pay 95% of your training fees. You're going to be asked to pay the remaining 5%. So as you can see, that's a huge investment by the government in our skills strategy as a nation. The other thing that we're increasingly seeing that I think, again, isn't always has a great deal of exposure is there are a number of apprenticeship levy transfer schemes available. And these are schemes where larger organisations, so we're typically talking PLCs, universities, the NHS, are all big donors to this, can donate a percentage of their apprenticeship levy and gift that amount to smaller organisations to pay 100% of their training fees. So the key message is here, if you're a large organisation, even if you exceed the amounts that are available in your levy pot, you're still only going to be asked to pay 5% of the fees. And for smaller organisations, you're going to be asked to pay between 5% and 0 if you were to look at some of those levy transfer schemes. With Crimson, we actually partners with the West Midlands Combined Authority, and we use their levy transfer scheme. And that was amazingly easy. We just asked Crimson for some basic information. We shared it with the team at the West Midlands Combined Authority. They linked us up to a donor, and it was all done very, very smoothly. The co-op also has a fantastic apprenticeship levy scheme. So the key message is here, when you're thinking about costs, it's not the training fees, it's the salaries that you're willing to spend to attract good people into your organisation.
Fantastic. I wasn't aware of so many incentives available. So plenty there to go at. And Kat, if I may come back to you, how long have we been running the program for now, and what does it look like today?
Sure. Well, Martin, I just wanted to make a point about that. That was a
Mm,
surprise in terms of the funding when we realised we'd get 100% of the funding costs. I think it was the 2020 cohort from the West
Yes.
Midlands Combined Authority. And I have to say, in my ignorance, my answer was, what's the catch? There wasn't a catch, which is a fantastic initiative, particularly to help smaller organisations.
Definitely.
But yes, so we took on our first formal cohort in 2019. We did have, as I said, apprentices before that, but we weren't necessarily investing the time in with them. And one of the challenges we found is, in order to help inexperienced consultants develop, you have to surround them with experienced people. There's a lot that they get through osmosis, if you like, by just sitting alongside. And of course, nowadays it's a virtual sitting alongside experienced consultants. But yeah, so we had our first cohort in 2019. We started with 8 apprentices. And interestingly, that program, as I said, we had that very clear vision. We had a very strong partner in Digital Native who helped us on that journey to shape the program. And what was great is that we've changed it over the years to as we've learnt, and we've accepted that we're not going to get it right every time. And I think that's a really important point for an organisation that's just about to start an apprenticeship scheme, is to start small and be prepared to learn and grow as you go, and that's okay. But having that clear vision about what your end result you want it to look like, and also from a business perspective, understanding the financials clearly and thinking about what are your timescales in terms of your people. In our instance, we're a consultancy firm, so how quickly would we like ideally our apprentices to start contributing in terms of billable income. But so our program has the core, which is the technical apprenticeship piece, and then we've got this holistic wraparound, which provides the sort of emotional intelligence piece, the human skills, and the business skills. And that's things like, for example, we have a reading list for the apprentices, which sometimes it wasn't so well received, particularly if people, it's not their core passion. But we've selected books based on a variety of topics, and the idea is to build in terms of their emotional intelligence. And that actually, once they've gone through that program, it's really well received. They have to do at least 2 book reviews where they do a 20-minute presentation to the whole organization on a summary of the book, key topics, key learnings and takeaways from the book, and a little bit of I guess criticism or their view on the book. So that's really part of that journey. And the program that we've built is really focused on adding to those sort of those soft skills, if you like, as well as the business skills around how to facilitate a workshop, how to present really well both on Teams and in person, how to manage difficult conversations, all the standard skills that you learn throughout your career. So we've tried to, as we've grown with this program, to think about all of those skills that you can't necessarily teach straight away. They're things that you build up over time.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, I mean, I've sat in on some of those presentations from those book reviews, and it always astounds me how emotionally astute and intelligent many of the people that we've had come through, very mature in many ways. So an incredible
Absolutely.
pool of talent.
Yeah, and the great thing about being almost forced or mandated to read a book, they wouldn't normally pick up some of these books and read them. It stretches their understanding, it stretches their knowledge, and knowledge of topics that would normally be outside of their sphere, and that encourages them to have the confidence to have conversations with our customers. It's a great skill to be able to say, hey, I've just read a book about this particular topic, and then have that conversation. Social skills are so important, and we know that particularly that's one of the key skills for the future workforce, that emotional intelligence.
Martin, if there's an organisation listening today and they're thinking, yeah, we get it, we need some kind of apprenticeship scheme, what would you suggest? What are the foundations that they need to get in place to make that successful?
I think the foundations for me are a lot of what Kat's already outlined. So I think it's really three simple questions. What are we trying to achieve with these apprenticeships? And as you said before, it tends to start with, oh, let's give apprenticeships a try, let's give people a first job in tech, those kind of thoughts. But just stepping back and going, what is it that we're actually trying to achieve here? And I think also splitting that question into kind of present and future. So what are we going to get these people to come in and do now? And what are we trying to grow for the future? So that future talent pipeline that I think Kat spoke about earlier. Thinking about what is it that we actually need these people to do. And again, really simple question. I think we probably had at least 4 meetings with Kat and Eddie trying to outline what a junior consultant needed, what was the skill set. And it was really easy, I think, to articulate the technical skills they needed. What was more difficult was to think about those professional behaviours they needed to be a junior consultant. And importantly, I think something that's often missing with apprenticeships is how are we going to measure success? So if we're sitting down at the end of this programme, how are we going to say this has either worked for us, this could be improved? And identifying, I guess, those areas for improvement. Again, one of the things that is really enjoyable about working with Crimson is every year we've gone through that process. We've had a new iteration of the programme. And to sit down with an employer and transparently both talk about what we think has worked well, what could be improved, without blame, but merely to say, how can we get this better next time? And I think, again, one of the things that Crimson have done really well throughout their academy is they've sought the views of the apprentices. So they haven't just spoken to senior leaders. We haven't just sat in a room and said, yeah, it's been brilliant, it's been fantastic. We've actually talked to those people that have gone through that programme. A couple of things, again, that I think can be really important around here is think about where these people are going to land. You may, for instance, have a need for software developers. Most organisations we talk to are always saying we need software developers. Is that the best place for somebody to get their first job in tech? Could it be support? Could it be as a software tester? Could it be as a business analyst? Where are the easier places to land people? And by easier, it's often where there's clearly defined tasks. So thinking about when we're landing these people, how are we going to articulate what this job is? Do we have clearly defined procedures? Do we have clearly defined tasks we can get them to do? One final thing that I think, again, a lot of organisations miss is thinking about the line manager. It's really easy for someone senior to go, I want to be the line manager of the apprentices and it's going to be great. They don't have the time to do it. So thinking about who's going to work with that line manager, and I think a really added value of apprenticeships is often identify people that aren't currently line managers or team leaders, people that are looking for the next step in the organisation. I'd like to be a team leader next. Well, give them a couple of apprentices, let them cut their teeth in management and supervision that way, and then they're emotionally invested in the apprentice's success, and also they're more likely to have the time to answer those questions on a day-to-day basis.
Right. So we've gone through a very challenging period with the pandemic and a shift to now a hybrid working environment. I'd be really interested in both your views on this around the impact on apprenticeship schemes in that hybrid world. What's working? What remains a challenge? Martin, if Cass, let's go to you first, if that's all right.
Just so keen to
You're
get
going to
in
jump
there.
in.
Well, it was actually following on from what Martin said as well about that support. And I think what we had recognised early on is the need to provide the sort of 360 support to an apprentice. So we not only have the line manager, which was, an academy manager, now a people development manager, but we also so the academy manager provides the pastoral care, the checking in, how you're doing, anything related to employment contracts. We also then have a buddy, which was an apprentice from the prior year, to help them with the understanding, how to put together a portfolio, and also how to balance the work versus study element, which is quite difficult, particularly if you've got school leavers straight from school coming into the work environment. But then we also assign what we call a mentor, which is an experienced role model within the area of business that they're going into, and that person is not necessarily the line manager. Very often it's not, and it's someone they can go to ask the questions that they may be too shy to ask their direct line manager, or just to help give them access to to the customers. So I think having that strong 360 support is really, really important. Now, coming back to your point about the pandemic, we recruited that year. So 2020 September, we took on board 10 apprentices. What I think is astonishing is we did all the recruitment online. And the first day we met them, I believe, Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, was the first day of their induction week.
Yeah.
We had them in the office for a week, and then they basically went to home working, virtual working. And it was a challenge. Let's be really honest and open about that, because you've got 18-year-olds straight from school going into work environment, and the norm for them, we realized over the next 12 months, is virtual working. So there are some elements of the expectation that you as an employee, that you go into the office, because that's where you build the network. You can mirror the behaviors that you see in the office, which is the culture of the organization. That element was missing. So we have experienced some challenges around how we want people to behave in the organization, particularly those school leavers who have known no different. It's through no fault of their own. So we have had to really think about how we can help them with their development, because it's a lot tougher doing it virtually. It's not impossible, but it's a lot tougher, particularly the cultural side of the learning.
Okay. Martin, is there anything else you might want to add to that you may be seeing elsewhere?
Yes, certainly. It's a question that we're often asked because we are living in a remote stroke hybrid world these days. And our advice is always the same: try and get them into the office as much as possible. If you imagine, we've all started jobs on day one and worked for big organizations, and the first thing you see is this huge building, and then you're part of a large organization. And certainly over COVID, we had apprentices working for global PLCs that didn't even know there were other offices in England, because they just met their team on a Teams meeting each day. So I think it's a really good idea to get people into the office. The other thing is, don't assume that everybody's got a great place to work at home. There's this assumption that we've all got home offices, we've got garden rooms, etc. we can camp out at, and we prefer it. What we do know is a lot of apprentices may still be living at home with parents, they may be in shared houses, and don't always have that opportunity to work effectively at home. So again, my general advice would be get people into the office and simply ask them the question: do they want to be in the office, even if their line manager or team aren't? And the other thing I would say is that doesn't mean their line manager has to go into the office every single day. It just means that there's an adult in the room that can make certain that they're okay, answer any questions, and ensure that they can work effectively on that day.
Right. Kat, where are we today with the Academy? We've now been running it for a few years, and I wanted to hone in specifically on maybe a question some people might have in their head around the retention of, you're investing an awful lot of time and effort into these people. Retention must be a question for you as well that you have to address.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in terms of overall retention, it's throughout the apprenticeship program itself, it's 97%. So in the time out of 32, I think we had one person who left during the actual apprenticeship, and that was within the first 3 months. I think she realized it wasn't the career for her. Sadly, we saw a lot of potential in her, so it was a real shame. 27% roughly of our workforce on our apprentices. And what we recognise is we probably went a little bit too fast. We got very over enthusiastic about hiring apprentices. We were still very, very much a small organisation, and there was a tipping point in terms of needing the sort of experienced consultants to support the more junior ones. So we paused it last year. We didn't take any apprentices on, and we're looking to restart again next year. And that was really important that we had the courage to do that, because it's a fantastic initiative to have fresh talent joining our organization. The benefits are massive to our organization. We'll probably talk about that in a minute. But it was almost a decision none of us wanted to take, but it was an important one, to pause and to almost embed into the organization the apprentices that had already come through the cohorts.
Let's talk about the benefits. What have we seen in the organization? How's it impacted us?
Well, the most important thing, of course, is, did it solve the original business problem, which is around that gap in our skill set? And happily, yes, it did. Our 2019 cohort are all fully utilised as consultants in the business now. We've got a couple of them leading projects, and that's within people starting in 2019 with some of them no background at all in IT. So I think that's a massive resounding tick next to the original business problem. But not only that, I think excitedly, I talked about diversity. We've increased our diversity in terms of gender, in terms of age, in terms of ethnicity. We're still got to work on neurodiversity, but I think there's always work to do there. But we've seen this sort of excitement in terms of the impact the program has had on our organization. I think we can say now we're a growth mindset organization. We've got this environment where it's safe to make mistakes. We recognize that the importance to learn from those mistakes, but having that safe environment where you can talk about what's gone wrong and learn from it. And that's really, really critical, particularly when you've got juniors joining the organization. You need to encourage that.
Brilliant. So yeah, and I definitely see. I think it creates a little bit of competition as well for the more established people in the organisation. They're sort of looking over their shoulder and seeing these great people coming through. I'm going to move quite quickly because we're a little bit short of time, but I am interested in Martin's view on this in particular around some of the trends that you're seeing in apprenticeships. I think there was maybe a little bit of a stigma a few years ago with apprenticeships and it being, I don't know, perhaps blue collar or something like that. But actually, there's definitely a shift happening there, isn't there, Martin?
Yeah, when we started Digital Native 10 years ago, and we'd go around to schools and we'd talk to parents, and I think apprenticeships were viewed as, well, if my daughter or son doesn't quite get the A-levels they wanted, well, an apprenticeship will do for them. It'll keep them off the streets for a few years. And I think what we have seen is a rise both in young people leaving school, college, university, looking for apprenticeships and seeing them as their best destination. I think the other thing that we're seeing is the interest from employers. So I think one of the things that we're seeing is employer expectations are increasing. If I go back 5 years ago when we were sitting down with Crimson designing the academy, we were doing that with one employer. There was one employer that was really interested in exactly what we were going to do and partner with them to develop good people. Now we're seeing that in probably 95% of our employers are keen to invest that particular time. What that's doing is creating fantastic jobs. So if we've got fantastic jobs for people to join, then they'll get good applicants and you get that cycle of success that I think Crimson have seen. And I think the other thing, going back to Kat's point, I mean, what an amazing statistic, 97% retained. That I think says that all the hard work that Kat and the senior leadership team have done to make Crimson a great place to start your career has really worked. And I think increasingly what we're seeing is employers focusing on retention. So yes, an interest on, let's attract great people, let's train them and help them develop while they're on the apprenticeship, but how are we going to keep them in the building after this? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't work. If you've got apprentices that are leaving within the first year of finishing their apprenticeship, in my eyes, the program's failed, because it hasn't solved, hopefully, the business problems that we set out to work with employers and partner with them on. So I think it's that overall we're seeing very much a virtuous cycle of more of an interest in employers. Their apprenticeships are strategically important, salaries are increasing, the opportunities available are increasing, and that focus on retention is just all pushing apprenticeships very high up in the agenda at the moment.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap things up. So very quickly on the last question, really, what help can we both provide if anybody's listening to this today, thinking about doing this? Kat, what would your recommendation be?
Oh gosh, so many lessons learned since 2019. So I'd happily chat with anyone that's interested to start an apprenticeship program. So reach out. I'm sure, Mark, you'll share the contact details. Start small and be clear about what is it you're trying to achieve. I think are the two clear messages from my side.
And Martin, from you?
Exactly the same. Please feel free to get in touch. Happy to chat to anybody. But Kat said something I think is really important. Start small, learn the lessons. You can always grow something that's working.
Okay, many thanks for you both joining us today on the show and sharing your expertise, and congratulations on a really successful apprenticeship program at Crimson Cat.
Pleasure. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that's it for today. Our next show is on Thursday, the 28th of September, where we'll be looking at the latest from Microsoft Dynamics and the Power Platform. Just a quick reminder, we've mentioned it a couple of times on the show previously, we still have the survey open for the annual Digital Leadership Report. If you aren't already aware, it's a worldwide survey of digital leaders and their attitudes to investment. There's a big emphasis on AI this year, as you can imagine, and also skills and training, some of the topics we've been talking about today. If you are a digital leader, I'd really recommend that you spend probably about 15 minutes completing that survey. You'll find that there's a bit.ly link, bit.ly, /DLR 2023. Yeah, DLR 2023. By completing that, you'll be first to receive the results on that, which will be coming out later in the year around November. So just a quick reminder on that. And then finally, don't forget to share and like the content if you like it. It's available on YouTube. We stream live to LinkedIn, but it's also an audio podcast as well. So if you think the content's really valuable, please like and rate it. It helps other people find that content. And with that, I will bid you a good day, and we'll catch up with you soon. Thank you for joining the Digital Lounge.